Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SHAM ROCKIN, the show that uncovers what's moving, breaking, shaking, or bottlenecking the manufacturing world. I'm Lilly Ferrer, and I'm here with John Casey today. And today's topic is, and it's a tongue twister, startup slip-ups. Why skipping procedures cost you big in manufacturing. So, John, frame this out for us.
Well, it's kind of funny because even before we started today, I was laughing a little bit because I think sometimes this sounds boring, right? The topic, startup. So maybe I'll skip this one. That's the irony. I think that it's one of the basics that so many, and we're going to talk about that today, that so many companies are just missing a basic. It's a basic, as I like to call it. So a couple of years ago, I ran an operation for a decent sized client, and they had close to 20 lines total. And part of our process was that we broke that down. They had 3 lines that produced just over 50% or just over half of all their product, and they were struggling. And so went to literally line 1, which was one of the 3 lines. And they were supposed to be making 3,000, we'll call them widgets. I don't want to get in trouble here. And they were supposed to make 3,000 widgets an hour. So that means not just the second, third, and fourth, but the first hour. And in that first hour, which is very common in manufacturing, they were making around 700.
Wow.
And what was going on was even more interesting was that I can still picture the operator, she and I still do Christmas wishes. The operator was frustrated. It was every day, it was something. It would be a jam or it would stop working, during that first hour, or she'd have supply chain issues. It was just literally always something. And she was a really good operator. But boy, I could tell within the first couple of weeks that she couldn't wait for her first break. And she was frequently in a bad mood before lunchtime. It was hard work. And I really knew we had to do something when she started complaining about pay. Because as I mentioned previously, pay should not be frequently on the table. So I had hers and the others on the line create a startup process.
Okay.
I mentioned by the way, that's a technique. And within 3 weeks, we were averaging around 29.50 for that line during the first hour. And the overall performance of the line was up over 12%. Because it's not just, we call it the first hour to power, and there's a reason. It's that first hour creates not only continuity with the other 7 hours or 9 hours on the shift, but it also creates momentum. Just like anything else, you get off to a good start in your day today, right?
I like that first hour to power.
Yeah, it's a little old school, but it's things that people blow off, and it blows up in their face. Startup procedures, as I always say, sounds boring, but think again. So, because when we have a sloppy process or a non-existent process, we're not just wasting time. Again, like I said, we're setting money on fire. If you've ever walked into a team that's struggling, like one of your lines, the folks in our listening audience, that the first hour was always a total disaster. That's not a bad morning. That's a symptom of a broken system.
Okay. So let me ask the obvious. What are startup procedures and why do they matter?
Well, again, I think some folks think, well, they're nice to haves, but they're literally, and if you think about this, whether it's sports or business or anything in life, they're the playbooks for not crashing your day before it even starts. So whether it's, after downtime, after a shift change, after a product swap, whatever it might be, it's your first line of defense against chaos. Skip a step, congratulations, you just introduced risk to chaos. And, in good manufacturing, sure, speed matters, but rushing without clarity, that's just, you're setting yourself up for disaster.
Okay. So in a previous podcast, we talked about the value of plans and processes and the pet peeve that a plan is only as good as the paper it's written on if it's executed, right? So why do these procedures get ignored or go missing?
I think sometimes they get ignored because people view them as just time consuming. The one I mentioned a few minutes ago, it took less than 10 minutes a day, and it increased the profit immediately. So, why would someone skip that? I think that 10 minutes in their mind seems like 10 minutes more than they have.
So what's missing?
Again, I think if here's why your floor is probably flying blind is we call it no documentation equals no accountability. So veteran operators believe that they just know how to do something, which is true about 80% of the time, not 20%, by the way. And that's cool until they call in sick, right? And then the whole shift ends up spinning like a top. We see that happen frequently. Or there's the actual process itself changes, and then you see people. The documentation hasn't changed with that actual. So the business changes the process, right, and the documentation doesn't change with it. Very common, which also leads to outdated SOPs. They might as well be scrap paper. You can bring them home and let your kids write on them. If you think it's not happening at your site, the problem that we run into is I've seen this at literally every single company I've been in the last 10 years has some level of issue with this. So there's a pretty big opportunity.
Okay. You can almost say that may be a root cause. I mean, if it's that prolific everywhere.
Absolutely. It is a root cause to opportunities. Again, you start great, finish great. There's a lot of great sayings out there, but another opportunity I think we see with it is inconsistent training. So, you have 10 operators, 10 different ways of doing something, right? So, and guess how many of those are actually going to work? Or maybe not for long. We're working with companies that go through a lot of specific training. So, think like TPM training and lean training and things of that nature. And what I find amazing with that, this is part of the training, but also a little different adage is the percentage of the people who understand why they're actually doing these. What do you think that is?
75%?
That'd be great.
3/4 maybe?
Less than 25%.
The opposite.
Yes. And these are mature, and I'm talking these are processes that people have been doing for 10 years. So these aren't brand new processes. The rush mentality, and no, I don't mean Rush Limbaugh. I'm talking about, people rushing, right? And they're just to get the line running, the supervisor says. I ask people at home, do you hear that on your floor? That pressure leads to shortcuts, and the shortcuts cost you. The very common one is shift-to-shift miscommunication. So night shift runs it one way, day shift comes in and runs it a different way, second shift runs it a different way. That shift-to-shift miscommunication is affecting your startup all the time. Or what we call changeover confusion. Again, you get a new SKU, the business gets a new SKU. Good for them, they sold a new product, right? It's great for the business. And then the process doesn't get updated. The pack size doesn't get updated. Something simple doesn't get changed. That's not agility, that's a disaster waiting to happen. Because now you sold a product that you can't deliver to the customer.
True. And I like that shift to shift miscommunication reference, because as a coach here in Shamrock, I hear it all the time. I mean, just imagine what it would be like if they could communicate, night shift with morning shift with afternoon shift. For those of you listening, so many times the night shift really feels left out and doesn't understand why. They're definitely in that group of people who need some more attention. But I digress. We can make an entire additional podcast out of that, I think. So what kind of cost are we talking about with all of this?
So again, it affects everything in your business, right? So let's start with downtime. Line jams, alarm screams, quick fix, lost time. If we had just, like I mentioned before, just taken that 10 minutes in the beginning, you're going to save yourself 4 hours on the back end, right? And if you're hearing what I mentioned earlier, if you're hearing the same issues coming up day after day, week after week, that sounds crazy, but that's actually what's happening. Product waste, you get bad seals, you get wrong labels, you just pay people to make garbage. And again, the one that kicks most folks and should scare most folks is, safety risks. You skip a lockout, tag out, bypass warm-up steps, and you're rolling dice with somebody's health. And, again, from a business perspective, that's your liability, plain and simple. Operator burnout, which ties into safety risks as well. But morale tanks, turnover spikes. Folks they get frustrated when
Yeah.
when they're starting up a line every day. That's sometimes why you have people calling off because I've literally asked people, they dread those first couple hours of the day so much they're like, well, I'll take a day off rather than put up with our changeover that's coming today that I don't want to be part of because I know it's not going to go well. That's creates a mindset. So if you think skipping steps is saving, you're right, there are some tongue ties. Skipping steps is saving time. It's not.
Yeah.
It's literally stealing profit.
Okay. So what can you share with our listeners or viewers to help with good startup procedures?
So I gave a hint at one of them earlier, which is, first things first. I mean, talk to the operators and ask the operators what they think they should do. That's what I have done numerous times, and it's just a matter of tweaking what they've actually done at that point. They know how the machines run, right? And then helping them create clear SOPs, front and center. So it's laminated checklists, it's visuals. Visual aids are always a great thing, in my opinion, in manufacturing. Color-coded, video. Just take the guessing out of it. The more you can have pictures and things of that nature, the better you're going to be. And folks say, well, that takes time to commit to create those. And money spent, money saved. Standardized training. Tribal knowledge doesn't scale. You have to document it, what they're talking about, teach it, and repeat it. Shipped handoffs that actually happen. So 5 minutes of clarity beats five hours of cleanup any day.
It really does.
A lot of times I say, hey, it's running. I hear that, or I should say, I hear it. These folks say, hey, it's running. One of the tips I give to folks is to have the supervisors walk together. So the supervisor that's coming off their shift and the supervisor coming on their shift, have them walk the lines together, talk about what's on the line. Imagine for a minute if you could, and we call them actually, like pilot checklists, because imagine a pilot handing off with, hey, we had some problems last night with the flight. Have a good day. Because that's the way we hand off machines sometimes. I wouldn't get on that plane, by the way. Verifications, have some built-in accountability. You have to have some kind of clarification. And we teach, get it right the first time, the clarification piece. If no one owns it, no one's going to do it. And again, schedule the time to do it right. 10 minutes can sometimes, again, equal 4 more hours. I see that all the time.
Yeah. Time is money.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So John, final takeaways for today?
Again, I think today we've built a lot of the lessons into the actual content. So don't cut corners. Cutting corners doesn't save you time. Do the checklists the correct way and spend a few extra minutes on it up front, and it'll keep you from digging a deeper hole later on. I want companies to stop normalizing chaos.
Okay.
Manufacturing is not meant to be chaotic, because that level of ambiguity and chaos, it kills productivity, it kills morale, kills profit, and hurts your safety. And if that doesn't scare you, you're already in trouble.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. So thanks, John, and thanks to our listeners and viewers for tuning in. Got a horror story from a botched startup? Bet you do. Or a process that saved the day? Tell us, we want to hear it. Subscribe, share, and forward this to a person who keeps saying, just skip the checklist, we'll fix it later, because later usually costs more. So until next time.